Gopi Jana Palapa Girivaratari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kishore Kishori ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki jai, Gaunitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Good morning. It's this morning we're reading from Canto 10, Chapter 90, and there are quite a few texts, 8 through 9, 10, 11, and 12. So we'll chant text 8 together. Upagiyamano Gantarvair Mridanga Panavanakan Vadayat Bir Mudavinam Suta Magadhavandibi Upagayamano Gandharvair Mridanga Panavanakan Vadayadibir Mudavinam Sutamagadhavandibi Upagayamano Gandharvair Mridanga Panavanakan Vadayadibir Mudavinam Sutamagadhavandibi. Please chant. Upagiyamano Gandharvair Mridanga Panavanakam Adayadibir Mudavinam Sutamagadhavandibi. Upagiyamano Gandharvair Mridanga Panavanakan Vadayadibir Mudavinam Sutamagadhavandibi. Upagiyamano Gandharvair Mridanga Panavanakan Vadayadibir Mudavinam Sutamagadhavandibi. Thank you very much. So I'll just chant text 9 and do the word for word. Sijamano chutastabhir hasanti bismarekakai pratisinchan vichikride yakshibir yaksharad ivam. So the word for word. Upagiyamana, being glorified by song. Gandharvai, by Gandharvas. Mridanga Panava Anakan. Mridanga, Panava, and Anaka drums. Vadayibi, who were playing. Mude, joyfully. Vinam, Venus. Sutta Magadha by Sutta, Magadha, and Vandi reciters. So that is text 8, word for word. So I'll read the translation, which is text 8 and 9 altogether. And this is, of course, BBT translation. As Gandharvas joyfully sang his praises to the accompaniment of Mridanga, Panava, and Anaka drums, and as professional reciters known as Suttas, Magadhas, and Vandis played Venas and recited poems praising him, Lord Krishna would play with his wives in the water. Laughing, the queens would squirt water on him with syringes, and he would squirt them back. Thus, Krishna would sport with his queens in the same way that the Lord of the Yakshas sports with the Yakshi nymphs. Text 10. Lina vastra vivritoru kucha pradesaham Sinchantya udrita brihad kavara prasunam kantam smare rechakajir sayayo paguyam jata smarotsmaya lasat vireju. And the translation for text 10. Under the drenched clothing of the queens, their thighs and breasts would become visible. The flowers tied in their large braids would scatter as they sprayed water on their consort. And on the plea of trying to take away his syringe, they would embrace him. By his touch, their lusty feelings would increase, causing their faces to beam with smiles. Thus, Lord Krishna's queens shone with resplendent beauty. Text 11. Nastu tatstana visajita kunkumasrak krida bisangaduta kuntala vrindabandham Sinchan Muryuvatibi Pratischamano Reme Karenupir Ive Pati Parita. And the translation for text 11. Lord Krishna's flower garland would become smeared with kumkum from their breasts, and his abundant locks of hair would become disheveled as a result of his absorption in the game. As the Lord repeatedly sprayed his young consorts and they sprayed him in turn, he enjoyed himself like the king of elephants enjoying in the company of his bevy of she-elephants. Text 12. Natanam nartakinam cha gita vajyopajivinam krita lankara vasamsi krishno datasya chashriya. And the translation for text 12. Afterwards, Lord Krishna and his wives would give the ornaments and clothing they had worn during their water sports to the male and female performers who earned their livelihood from singing and from playing musical instruments. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshura-militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Ragutam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitam Shah. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnebhyo namo namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimata Romapada Swami Iti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimata Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, looking at this section, I'm going to be referencing Srila Prabhupada writing in Krishna book. So there's an explanation that's given by Srila Prabhupada, as to this kind of enjoyment that's been experienced by Lord Krishna and his 16,000 palaces in the city of Dwarka. So he, and these are the words of Srila Prabhupada, as the supreme eternal enjoyer of all these facilities, expanded himself into 16,000 forms and simultaneously engaged in different family affairs in those 16,000 palaces. So in each and every one of the palaces, there were nicely decorated gardens and lakes. And this is all Srila Prabhupada's words. The crystal clear water of the lakes contained many blooming lotus flowers of different colors, like blue, yellow, white, and red. And the saffron powder from the lotus flowers was blown all around by the breeze. All the lakes were full of beautiful swans, ducks, and cranes, crying occasionally with melodious sounds. Lord Sri Krishna sometimes entered those lakes or the rivers with his wives and enjoyed swimming pastimes with them in full jubilation. Sometimes the wives of Lord Krishna, who were all goddesses of fortune, would embrace the Lord in the midst of the water while swimming or taking a bath, and the red vermilion of kumkum decorating their beautiful breasts would adorn the chest of the Lord with a reddish color. So that's an expansion by Srila Prabhupada from Krishna book on this section that we're covering today. So in the text that we did together, and the following text, text 8 to 9, there's mention of the Gandharvas joyfully singing his praises, and there's also an accompaniment of madangas, panavas, and anuka drums. So in addition, there's also professional reciters known as sutas, magadas, and vandis, and they're playing venas and they're reciting poems praising him. So this is all simultaneously while the Lord and his queens have entered these lakes or rivers. So Lord Krishna would play with his wives in the water. Naturally, to get insight into the play of Lord Krishna and his wives, one can turn to some of the statements that have to do with how one sees Krishna, so to speak. So here's from Bhagavad Gita 11:54. There's an explanation given by Srila Baladev Vijayabhusan. And he says that Lord Krishna says that it is possible to know him, meaning to understand better. And he says it's possible to know me. So this is Baladev Vijayabhusan commenting, talking as though Krishna's talking. It's possible to know me as I am, the four-armed son of Devaki, by the Vedas, by charity, by austerity, and by worship. And if one also has exclusive devotion to me. So, one can read these pastime or this nice description of Krishna and his wives entering the rivers and lakes, these beautiful lakes with their swans and cranes and the beautiful sounds and the lotuses with the breeze moving the pollen around. But this is actually how you're able to see and understand it. It's actually a much deeper process. As you can hear it, but it's actually involves that what's involved in actually seeing it correctly is that one is studying the Vedas, one's giving charity, one's practicing austerity, and one's worshipping him, and also one is carrying some devotion exclusively for Lord Krishna. Then one can hear it properly and understand it better. So it's only by this bhakti, so this is still Srila Baladev Vijayabhusan, it's only by this bhakti, and he's talking as though Krishna's talking, that it's possible to see me and to become truly connected with me. So there has to be the component of devotion to actually be able to see Krishna as we're reading this. So Srila Baladev Vijaybhusan, he explains that the knowing of Krishna by exclusive devotion means you're devoted to Krishna. Along with these other processes, it has to take place under certain conditions. So we're going to look at it a little bit more closely. Study of the Vedas means study of the Gopala Upanishad. This is Srila Baladev Vijaybhusan, this is what he says. And it's that part of the Vedas which describes Krishna directly. Is attached to the Atharva Veda. And austerity means that one is fasting on his appearance day and one's fasting on Ekadasi, at least from grains and beans, as well as other days. And charity should mean that one's giving one's possessions as gifts to the devotees. That's what charity means. And worship should mean worship of his deity form. So those are the particular components that make up being able to actually understand or to know Krishna when one's hearing these particular pastimes. So I'm going to help us along. I'm going to read the description of Lord Krishna in the Gopala Tapana Upanishad. I'm going to read 3 verses because they're a meditation on Krishna's form. So that was the recommendation, that one read the Gopala Tapana Upanishad in order to be able to understand or know Krishna. So we're reading some very intimate pastime of him sporting with his queens. So to help us along, I'm going to read 3 verses from the Gopala Tapana Upanishad. So here's one of them. So I'll first read the English and then the Sanskrit. He is surrounded by cowherd men, cowherd girls, and cows, and sits decorated with divine ornaments on a jeweled lotus at the foot of a heavenly desire tree. So as we're hearing it, we can meditate. And the Sanskrit is Gopa Gopi Gavavitam Sura Druma Talashrayam Divya Lankaranopetam Ratna Pankaja Madhyagam. Here's the second verse. He's fanned by pleasant breezes, moistened by spray from the waters of the Kalindi. Anyone who meditates on Krishna in this way will be liberated from repeated life and death. And here's the Sanskrit. Kalindi Jala Kaliola Sangi Maruta Sevitam Chintayan Chetasa Krishna Mukto Bhavati Samshrite Iti. So, in this particular text that we're doing today, Srila Vishwanath points out that the queens soaked Krishna's body with water from their water guns. And the word that was there for the water guns was Rechakai. And Srila Vishwanath, he adds that the comparison that's made with the yakshas, because they're actually saying, they're comparing the way the queens are using these syringes to squirt water onto the body of Krishna. The comparison is made that it's just like the yakshas. So this comparison is made because of the ferocity of their sporting. They're very ferocious in how they're doing it. So Srila Prabhupada gives a reason for this kind of exhibition. And this is the reason he gives. So why Krishna is actually exhibiting this kind of pastime. So there has to be a reason. So we're armed with our proper meditation on Krishna's form to understand. And here's the next part, the reason for why Krishna is doing this. And this is what Srila Prabhupada says. The impersoners would not dare believe that in the spiritual world there are such varieties of enjoyment. But in order to demonstrate the factual, ever blissful enjoyment in the spiritual world, Lord Krishna descended to this planet and showed that the spiritual world is not devoid of such pleasurable facilities of life. And Srila Prabhupada says the only difference is that in the spiritual world, such facilities are eternal, never-ending occurrences, whereas in the material world, they are simply impermanent, perverted reflections, any kind of enjoyment. In the spiritual world, it's eternal, never-ending. And in the material world, it's impermanent, any kind of enjoyment, and it's just a perverted reflection of what's happening in the spiritual world. Of course, that doesn't apply to the pastime we're hearing about, but that's the particular reason for Lord Krishna exhibiting this extraordinary pastime of sporting with these queens, is to show that there's this incredible variety of enjoyment that goes on in the spiritual world and that it's very blissful. So, and Srila Prabhupada is adding that part, that it's challenging any impersonalist idea, because they generally don't believe there's anything. It's all a kind of nothingness. So they wouldn't imagine that there's such a variety of enjoyment going on. So I'm going back to Krishna book and Srila Prabhupada writing. So here's how he describes. In a festive mood, the wives of the Lord would sometimes sprinkle water on his body with a syringe-like instrument, and the Lord would similarly wet the bodies of the queens. When Krishna and the queens engaged themselves in these pastimes, it seems as if the heavenly king, Yaksharaju, were engaged in pastimes with his many wives. So Yaksharaj is also known as Kubera and is considered to be the treasure of the heavenly kingdom. So that comparison is made. It's sort of got a very opulent kind of mood, the sporting. So Srila Prabhupada adds that when the wives of Lord Krishna thus became wet, their breasts and thighs would increase in beauty 1,000 times, and their long hair would fall down to decorate those parts of their bodies. So it all appeared very beautiful. It's like, when you look at a painting and there's always like a grace and a flow in a painting, or there should be, at least with such a subject. And the beautiful flowers placed in their hair would fall, and the queen, seemingly harassed by the Lord throwing water at them, would approach him on the plea of snatching the syringe-like instrument. So this attempt would create a situation wherein the Lord would embrace them as they willingly approached him. Upon being embraced, the wives of the Lord would feel on their mouths a clear indication of conjugal love. This is Srila Prabhupada writing. A clear indication of conjugal love, and this would create an atmosphere of spiritual bliss. So it's a very extraordinary, the intimacy of it, and from our material perspective, it's sort of astounding that there's such an description that's highlighting, the parts of the body, the particular mood that's been aroused of conjugal love. And Srila Prabhupada notes, I'm going to actually switch now. This is all Srila Prabhupada, expanding. But it's actually Srila Vishwanath who makes a note that Krishna's garland was smeared with the kumkum from their breasts. So that's the only point he highlights. But notice how Srila Prabhupada really expands on the whole scenario. So one can note, because we're looking at this point, the highlight of the bodies having become soaked with water and how it's actually accentuating the limbs or the form of the body. So one can note that beauty is an ideal. And usually beauty if you were to analyze, it refers to a perfect organization of parts. Like all the parts are perfectly organized. So if you were to compare it with what's pretty, so pretty, on the other hand, tends to be a very superficial attractiveness. So in our society, we may say, oh, that's a pretty person or a pretty girl, but it's a very superficial attractiveness. And it lacks that grandeur and that sublime aspect. And that's what's been highlighted just through this very fine description where, there's, it's almost like the shape of the body, the parts of the body are being emphasized when the water is actually soaking the clothing. And the reason for this is that it lends a grandeur and a very sublime aspect. It highlights the beauty of the queens. And in our society, I was involved in the fashion industry when I was in my 20s, and there was it's even in the present day, there's this understanding of, highlighting the form in some sort of way. So there was this collection by a very well-known British designer, Alexander McQueen, in 99, which was called the Golden Shower. And it featured dresses which were translucent white and others were yellow. And the Golden Shower submerged the ladies' outfits, making it rainy, and hence the clothing had a very wet look because they were rain-soaked. So it's a similar idea. You want to enhance the beauty, add something sublime, some grandeur to, in this case, the way the clothing would enhance the body. So this person, this designer, created a golden shower on the models. So you can see the idea is understood. So that was merely called the wet look. And here we're hearing about the extraordinary beauty of the queens, and there's the additional part that the golden shower, in this case, there's some mention of that pollen coming from the lotuses, that there's a lot of yellow pollen present too. So afterwards, and this is Srila Vishwanath, he gives the ornaments and the clothing, or the ornaments and clothing that were used during their water game, they're given to the musical performers. So the word that was used was naturnam. So there's wet garments, but they're very valuable. And they were just taken away by the professional singers and dancers. And Srila Prabhupada explains that these singers and dancers had no means of subsistence other than the reward of valuable garments and ornaments, which were left by the queens and kings on such occasions. So it was a common practice. So it wasn't just Krishna and the queens doing this, but generally the queens and the kings, should they actually go and bathe and there were musical performance, they would actually give their valuable garments used in the bathing and their valuable ornaments to the performers, because that was the means of subsistence for those performers. So in fact, the whole system of society was so well planned that all the members of society in their different positions as Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras had no difficulty in earning their livelihood. So this is explained by Lord Krishna, and this is from Bhagavad Gita 4.13. He says, according to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And although I'm the creator of the system, you should know that I'm yet the wonder, being unchangeable. So it means, as Srila Baladev Vijayabhusan puts it, that regarding these words of Lord Krishna, so this is Baladev Vijayabhusan articulating Lord Krishna. Know that though I'm the cause of creation, maintenance, and destruction, I'm also not the cause, being separated from my action. So this is very interesting, very subtle. Thus, I am devoid of prejudice in all these actions. So this is Srila Baladev Vijayabhusan expanding on Lord Krishna's words as though Lord Krishna is articulating his thoughts. Though I am the creator, I do not deviate from impartiality in regard to the objects of my creation. So just to get a sense, Krishna is very impartial. So this has some implication for what we're hearing here, because the Kshatriyas are generally predominated by rajas or passion, and hence they have their action of fighting. But, and this is explained, that they have various qualities like heroism, because Krishna is in the category of a Kshatriya in this pastime. Heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage in battle, generosity, note, generosity, and leadership are the natural qualities of work for the Kshatriya. So in this particular case, it's Bhagavad Gita 18:44, what we're witnessing is this generosity. The queens and Lord Krishna give away all their garments and all their ornaments once they emerge from the water to the performers. So it's without restriction that the Kshatriya gives up his wealth. And that's what we're witnessing with how Lord Krishna is functioning here. So this is actually the extent of what I was able to extract from these verses. So if there's some thought to add to this particular pastime of Lord Krishna, please feel free.
Okay, so I guess thank you for the class, Mataji. I guess I have to gravitate towards the musical or instrumental music, what they were saying.
You have to what?
Gravitate towards the statement of they were playing instrumental music. So I was wondering if, because I've heard before where I've heard it said that unless the mantras accompanying the music, that it's not like bona fide or worth anything. So
move the microphone.
Sometimes I've heard it stated that if you play music, it has to be accompanied with the mantra to be spiritual. So I was wondering, what type of, is there any place or any indication, or have you heard anything more about the instrumental music that they play?
Well, the description here was 3 kinds of drums. And indeed, you're completely right. There is mention that it's along with the Maha Mantra. There's actually mention. So the drumming is with the Maha Mantra. Yeah, so you're quite right. Yeah, it was actually mentioned. So that was the preferred instrument. And I would imagine that the drumming sound also works very well with splashing of water. It sort of seems to enhance. I mean, just putting the sounds together, I would imagine that it's a very nice synchronization.
There was a recent trip to Gita Nagari, and Lochan Das Prabhu was telling me that they had Western instruments in the kirtan, like saxophone, bass guitars, or something like that. Is that Is there anything you can tell me about that? Like in Gita Nagari, you guys went to Gita Nagari, and they had like where they were playing Western instruments in the kirtan and stuff.
Yes, there was one evening where it was termed orchestral music. So indeed, there was a devotee, and perhaps, devotee singing the Maha Mantra very slow, and maybe 4 or 5 other persons playing different instruments, just as you've described. So it had a very orchestral feel. Yeah, very because there were so many devotees and such diverse instruments. So it had a sense of an orchestra. One could almost imagine somebody standing there conducting it. So yeah. Well, thank you very much for your kind attention. This is the best that could be done with this. So you have a lot of free time today. Thank you for kindly attending the class. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.